Hi, welcome to Nikki's vlog, and today, feminine versus sexy. I'm going to lift a little bit out of one of my shows. I have 3 shows, Pray, To Pee or Not to Pee, and God Hates Me, I'm Trans. I'm just going to give you a little kind of slither out of the first one, which is Pray. And in Pray, I discussed that this, I didn't realise this until I started doing it, but drag, D-R-A-G, actually stands for Dressed as Girl. And obviously, the opposite of dressed as girl is dressed as boy. And I usually look at the audience, find a boy on the front and go, very drab. For me, dressed as, or D-R-A-B, is probably more like dressed as Beyonce. I do know, I'd like to point out, I do know that we've misspelt her name because it was sort of a play on words. But after the show, people kept coming after me and saying, that's not how she spells her name. I know it was a joke that went over most people's heads. And she has a song, you may remember it, If I Were a Boy, it goes like this.
If I were a boy.
And my observation is if she were a boy, she wouldn't need to go and work out, would she? Because she's clearly buff as hell. Anyway, dressed as boy leads me in my show to talk about, if I was going to dress as a girl, as I do, then there's some style icons that I would be trying to shoot for. And for me, I don't mind whether it's Audrey Hepburn or Grace Kelly, but there's some kind of idea about what glamorous and feminine looks like that probably isn't what most people seem to go for. Like I say, Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, or maybe Cleopatra, or maybe not this Cleopatra, maybe this Cleopatra. That kind of elegant, sophisticated look is kind of where I would find myself drawn to. But actually what you find is that most boys that cross-dress fall into one or 2 categories. I like to call these dram and draw. Let's start with dram. D-R-A-M really means dressed as mother. Or in this case, Mary Berry. I sort of think this look, Twinset and Pearls is saying, come around and see me, I'm relaxed, I'm cool, I'm sophisticated, I've got a bun in the oven and I'm waiting for a scally to, I've got a loaf in the oven and I'm waiting for Paul Hollywood to come round and see me. Dressed as mum, I think, is where boys are trying to emulate the women in our lives that we love. And at one end of the spectrum, you've got this idolized male view of what femininity is, and kind of Mary Berry probably kind of nails it. Unfortunately, I think when most boys are aiming for this look, they tend to go and shop at Oxfam and find clothes that were Twinset and Pearls, probably last worn by a 90-year-old and probably a faint smell of urine. This kind of look is where they end up if they're not careful. Of course, the opposite end of the spectrum from dram is draw, and in this case, I mean dressed as whore. I know some people think that's spelt with an H, not a W. But again, I don't really think they're aiming for the kind of sophisticated Mole Flanders kind of look, or maybe, if you remember this TV show, The Secret Diary of a Call Girl, all the outfits are fabulous and glamorous and gorgeous and kind of trendy and all the rest of it. No, I think they're thinking more Pretty Woman. And actually what you generally find is that there's a bunch of transgender people. This is a transgender prostitute from Buenos Aires. As you can see, they're kind of rocking the whole similar sort of look. Overly sexualized, fishnets, black boots. In this case, the skirt is clearly optional. But the idea is that they are, I think, emulating this other end of the spectrum of the women that men love. And that's kind of, women that are, overly sexualized. Let's leave it like that. Again, for me, there's some of us sitting in the middle that are really kind of actually into the fashion and are aiming for the sort of Cinderella look. But again, I think, unfortunately, some boys miss it and look less like Cinderella and more like the Ugly Sisters. Point is, seems to be a spectrum. At one end, we've got, the women that we all want to bed, and and the other end, the women that we all want to hug. And so that seems to be the spectrum between dram and draw. For me, it was always two different things. Okay, for me, at one end of the spectrum, it's about building friendships. All of my friends are female. I like to socialize with girls. I find that when there's no other men around, when there's just female company, it's much more enjoyable, much more relaxing. It's less competitive, and I just kind of love to spend my time in the company of sophisticated, intelligent, smart people, and they're mostly women. And then at the other end of the spectrum, then we've got the whole fashionista thing. I am enthralled is probably the word with fashion. I love the way you can express yourself as a girl in a way that you can't express yourself as a boy. And so I sort of, in the show, suggest that I sit somewhere in the middle. I kind of perhaps not dram, perhaps not draw, somewhere in the middle, kind of looking for, some kind of balance between them. But the more and more I do this for business, the more and more I teach people in a business setting, the more I'm realizing that actually there is something potentially sinister here and something that's worth exploring. And I will be exploring it in a series of vlogs and series of interviews with people where I try and understand where the line is between being feminine and being sexy. And part of the reason I miss this sometimes is because I'm not particularly interested in boys. I'm not particularly interested in portraying myself as sexually available. I don't perhaps see where the line is. And so sometimes I don't see where that thin, fine line is between being feminine and being sexy. And sometimes, I miss it. I'm probably aiming for glamorous. Glamorous is a really interesting word. The old English definition of glamorous was that it was, the way a female put a glamour or a spell on people around them, help people see things that aren't really there. Spellbinding, glamorous is an interesting root for an interesting word that I feel might be aspirational for trannies my age. But I don't necessarily see it because, of course, when I look at photographs like this, all I see is a prettier version of myself, and I love the photograph. But then one of my mentors pointed out that I'm showing a bit of bare shoulder, I'm looking over it, it's quite coy, that actually this might be the wrong side of that fine line between feminine and sexy, whereas this one is probably on the other side. So the line is somewhere between these two photographs. One of them is feminine, that one, and one of them is perhaps just the other line of sexy. And so I have, for now, replaced on all my social media and on my emails this photograph with this photograph because it's the other side of that fine line. But I'd really like to know what you think. Clearly, I'd really like to know what Gok thinks. This is a photograph from literally the second time I was out in public dressed as a girl, and I got the outfit for the venue completely wrong. It was in a place called Madame Jojo's in London, which is unfortunately closed down. But on a Wednesday night at a venue, at a party that was called Tranny Shack, which was clearly for all of the trannies in London. And I, first time out on my own, second time I'd ever been dressed as a girl, I kind of walk into Tranny Shack completely inappropriately dressed for the party, for where we were. I was wearing a twin set of pearls. I think you can see the pearls that I'm wearing, and it's Marks & Spencer's twin set, a little suede skirt, and a pair of under the knee suede boots. And I thought I looked great. I thought I looked kind of middle class, kind of middle-aged, kind of well-presented female. And of course I walked into a club full of mostly drawers. I think I was the only one that wasn't wearing a leather miniskirt. I was certainly the only one not in fishnets, and I was certainly probably the only one that wasn't in black. And I felt really self-conscious and was about to walk out when Gok is at the bottom of the stairs with his boyfriend and waved at me and gave me a nod. And I thought, well, maybe it's not completely wrong. Anyway, I got the seal of approval from Gok on my second day out, and it did kind of encourage me that maybe I didn't have to, do it the way all the other trannies did it. Anyway, that's what I think. I'd really like to know what you think. /NikkiTake, @NikkiTake, #NikkiTake, or Google NikkiTake. You'll be able to find me and tell me, where is the line between feminine and sexy? And I might actually write a proper blog about this because I think it's really interesting finding out where that line happens to be and whether or not it's different in different social contexts. But please tell me in the notes, in the comments. I'd really like to know, what do you think? Am I glamorous or not?